It goes back to 2008 when, because of the dot-com meltdown and the sunsetting of Act 221, there was less patent work for me to do in Hawaii.
The dots are beginning to connect on all of this, yeah.
And so I decided I wanted to take a trip around the world. I wanted to experience for myself the planet as a whole. And my wife very graciously said, okay, I'll take care of Lauren in school, and you can travel by yourself, just don't get into any trouble, and have a great time. So I planned this itinerary where I flew west continually during daytime hours because I wanted to be able to see the ground below. And it was a life-changing experience because suddenly I could see everything that had been written about in history. I could see, you know, the Asian landmass and the Himalayas and the Middle East and Turkey, Istanbul, Europe, the whole thing. And it just got me thinking, hey, we really do live on one planet. And we really do know something about it. And we're in charge of taking care of this planet. So that was the start of an idea for this book, in which I used my travel diary as kind of a log of cities and places I visited, along with a plot relating to the survival of planet Earth. And particularly the idea of nuclear weapons proliferation, which in our lifetime has reached a stage where combatants of any extreme philosophy can have access to these weapons. Because actually they're very simple to make, and all the information is on the internet. And all you need is 10 kilograms of fissile uranium, and there are lots of contraband and unsecure stockpiles of both weapons and fissile material. So I believe this is an issue of our age, and so the book uses that as a plot to tell the story.
You say plot. That it sounds like this is fiction now?
Well, I was kind of guided to the fact that nobody would read a science-based story unless it could keep people's interest. So I developed a plot.
Statement about the human condition.
I developed a plot, and roughly it involves a lawyer from Hawaii who's taking an around-the-world trip.
This is not autobiographical, then?
No, not in the least. And happens to see, while on the trip, one of the other tour guests turning over what looks suspiciously like a CIA folder for classified documents to shadowy Islamic figures in a restaurant in Istanbul. And because the lawyer writes on arms control issues for the East-West Institute, he immediately...
That's not a real institute.
No, it's the East-West Center, but in the book it's called the East-West Institute. He immediately feels very conflicted, and he feels that he has to do something responsible and is not sure what to do. So that's where the story unfolds.
Well, okay, before we get into the actual development of the plot, so you write this book after you came back from the trip.
Yes.
You write it with your journal in hand.
Yes.
You went with your family?
No, I traveled alone, and it's the only
what an
way.
Experience.
It's the only way I could have had this experience, because I went exactly where my interest led me, to museums, to historical sites, to cultural places, and I did not have to go shopping. I did not have to to deal with sightseeing.
I understand.
And keeping everyone happy.
Wow, this is really interesting. It's sort of like, I mean, when we were younger, when you finished your schooling, whether it be college or graduate school,
Head off for the sunset.
yeah, you would, right, you go take a look. And this is sort of, in the, I don't want to say the end of your career, but in the later years of your career,
Yes.
after how many, 30, 40 years?
40 years. This is my 40th year as a patent
You don't
attorney.
look it, I
Okay.
look it, Anyway, so you did something that you might have done way back when, and you do it now with all the experience and the wisdom you've gained in practicing law in at least 2 places, and meeting all those people and finding out about the human condition and all the foibles, reading the paper for 40 years plus, then you go with this bag of this sort of inventory of ideas, and you go and you check it out one more time. That's fabulous.
Yeah.
Did you suffer?
No, I had the best time of my life, and really for the past 5 years, working on this book has been the most fun.
How many years?
5 years.
5 years. So after you came back from the trip, then you hunkered down for a 5-year stint?
Well, in between my legal work, which always took precedence, and that was a difficult thing because the instant my docket got full, the book got pushed to the back burner. And also what I found was that I could not switch on a day-to-day basis between book writing and legal work. I had to reserve whole weeks at a time. And so that's why it took 5 years. It was difficult to make time for it.
Yeah. But so when you say you can't switch, then what would you do? You take one day for this and the other day for that?
Well, I would put aside whole weeks at a time for book writing. So I would start to maneuver my docket to clear out a week of time. And then when I switched into book writing mode, it was totally different. There is no analysis and working with documents. A lot of it was about listening to dialogue in my head. And it would take a couple of days before I reached that mode where I would actually dream dialogue, in my sleep. And that's when I knew it was ready, time to write.
So you knew before you took the trip you were going to write the book?
No, I didn't, but I had an inkling because I kept a diary very assiduously, and I actually wrote large parts of the thematic pieces in the diary. So the diary was complete by the time the trip was ended. Words
that perfectly described what you were seeing and thinking. Those words trip off and become the beginning of the text, the beginning of the prose, am I right?
Pretty much, with one twist. Because I was seeing the planet in a way that I had never thought of before. It seemed like a completely different viewpoint of planet Earth. And so I thought, well, if an alien were to come to planet Earth and study humans,
In a way, we're all aliens, aren't we?
yeah, he'd pretty much be doing what I'm doing. And so the diary was written as if it was an alien log, which is not to say it's anything unusual. It's, as you say, we all have this higher consciousness where we can look at the whole and see it in a different light.
Well, I mean, when you set it up that way, though, you really come with a carte blanche.
Mm-hmm.
You are like an alien, and you come fresh on it, and you find things that you would never really find if you came with all kinds of
That's
advanced ideas about it. Mm-hmm. So did you know was your itinerary in this trip, was it based on the idea that you might write a book, or was it just based on places of interest?
Actually, it was based on a couple of things. One is that we have a musician who visits Hawaii every year named Latif Bolat, who's a Sufi musician and poet. And he loves his native country, Turkey, so much that he organizes land tours there every year for very little money, and you stay at the most authentic places, and you even get to hear him perform with other Turkish musicians. So I decided that was a trip I wanted to take. So that was the antipode of the earth for me, is Turkey. And then meanwhile, along the way, I filled it in with cities that I just thought historically had great importance.
What China Road cities?
In earth history.
The Silk Road.
Yeah, Silk Road, Shanghai, Beijing, Guangzhou, and especially Mongolia. You know, I read The Secret History of the Mongols, and just, it's such a mystery to me how these ragtag horsemen out of the nomadic steppes could conquer all of the known world in 70 years. So I had to find out for myself. So visiting Mongolia and going to Karakorum and the national museums in Ulaanbaatar, these were all part of my itinerary.
Oh, what a trip.
Yeah.
Gee whiz. I mean, it just takes you, you fly like a magic carpet.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's all there. You know, we read about it, we learn history, but it doesn't have the quality of reality until you see it yourself. You know, there is the Danube, you know, there is the Balkans and Turkey and the Middle East. I mean, and it's all unfolding underneath you. And then suddenly you realize, you know, we actually know a lot about human history, about our origins on the planet, about the science and factual basis for things that are happening. We choose to ignore so much of it because we have kind of a daily consciousness that wants to know what the Kardashians are doing and what the stock market is doing. But if we could step back and look at the planet as a whole, we actually know a lot, or should know a lot about it. And the other thing is, all this knowledge is accessible to us. We have Wikipedia now, we have Google.
True.
All this knowledge is instantaneously accessible to all of us. So there is no excuse for having an ignorant view of our planet.
No excuse, it's true, especially now, and more so every day. So did you take a computer with you? Did you do research either before or during the trip to get up to a level of understanding?
Pretty much, and all that research went into picking the itinerary. And I did all my land arrangements on the internet. And every one of them worked out, and it is possible.
Really, in developing countries, far reaches, yes. You were able to set up hotel rooms on the internet.
Yes, and land tours and camel rides.
So did you talk to people, either A, to find out what was in their hearts on the subject, or B, to tell them what was in your heart on the subject, or a combination?
Actually, I preferred to remain an observer because, conversational dialogue with people tends to get into the daily and the ordinary.
We're not doing that today, though.
Today, no.
Today we're doing your book.
Today we are having a high-level view. So, and especially traveling around the whole planet and trying to see the planet as a whole. I didn't want to get sort of diffused into daily issues. I preferred to just observe how people were interacting, how the different cultures responded to different things and issues in their environment, and to take note of them. And actually, there wasn't enough time to converse with everyone. I mean, I did have conversations with people in all the different areas to the extent that they were accessible through English. But mostly it was a real pleasure to just sit back and observe.
Did you take pictures or did you record
Oh
sounds?
yeah. They're all on Facebook. My 180 picture travel log.
I have to go look. I have to. You should all look. So it's Leighton Chong on Facebook. So take a look.
Yes.
You'll see. Well, I mean, did you ever have another experience prior to this one that was of this kind of experience?
Yes, but I would have to say it was with artificial stimulants. This was a real happening, and it's accessible to everyone. If we would just take the time for it and expand our viewpoint, who knows how you might see things differently.
Well, but I mean, I think you haven't mentioned, and I need to ask. I mean, you're traveling alone. Mm-hmm. You're a pretty tall, strong-looking fellow. Mm-hmm. But the fact is, you're at some risk if you travel alone into mm-hmm. strange places where people could see you as vulnerable. Mm-hmm. A lot of people wouldn't do that, simply on the personal security side of things. Mm-hmm. Did you ever have any issues or concerns about it?
No, actually. Well, first of all, I didn't go trekking. I didn't go into places that were outside of civilization. So mostly cities and mostly tours that were organized for visitors. So actually I didn't really feel a sense of physical risk. And maybe part of it is having lived in New York City for 22 years, you develop a sixth sense for how to stay out of trouble.
Right. You develop a sort of a contingent plan in your mind on how to deal with anything that might come down the path.
And so it comes down the other way. I would avoid experiences because of the risks that I perceive. And I'll give an example. When I was in Mongolia, and Mongolia has always been a nomadic place and still is, and so they depend on livestock and horses. And my Mongolian guides were very keen to get me on a horse and gallop across the steppes.
They wanted you to enjoy their lifestyle.
Yeah, this is having fun
that sounds
in their
great.
part. And, I've ridden horses before, but I've never been at a level where I could say that I really could control a horse. So I said, well, I really didn't want to take a risk of ending my trip by having a fall and breaking a leg or something like that. So they said, well, what can you ride? I said, well, how about a camel? And they said, well, you might get bitten or kicked by a camel. And I said, well, then get me a small camel. So that is how the Mongol guides picked this teenage camel for me to ride on.
It is a small camel.
It is a small one, and a youngster, and it's got fuzzy hair.
It looks very sweet, actually.
And the guide said, next time you come to Mongolia, you ride fast horse, okay?
And you take that? Would you do that?
The next time, yeah, I might take that risk.
I suppose, that's a question that is also compelling. Is all these places, you establish sort of a one-on-one, because you're alone, a one-on-one relationship with all these places and people that probably loom large in retrospect. Don't you feel a need to go back and check it out again? It's been, at least 5 years now. Why not do that? Do you have it in your mind to do that, make the trip again?
I have it in my mind to travel again, but I have kind of a viewpoint that experiences happen only once. When you're there, that's it. And so going back with the idea that I might relive an experience that I passed up before or do it again and enjoy it as much is not something that I feel would apply to me. On the other hand, I didn't see the whole Earth. I was largely in the Northern Hemisphere. I haven't seen the Southern Hemisphere. I didn't visit a lot of poor countries. I didn't visit war-ravaged countries. So if I think about traveling again, it might be to places that are less comfortable. But then, of course, the older I get, the less I want to put myself at risk of such things. So it may be that this is the only trip I will take.
But that's okay, because you've documented it and you have, you know, detailed and precious recollections of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, so far, we're about the midpoint now. So far, I get out of this that here's a patent lawyer, you know, who has to be an engineer or a scientist,
Well,
a technology person by definition.
working with patents all my life has been about looking at technology and being able to understand it and convey it to a public audience. That's what writing a patent is all about.
And that's what writing a book is about, too.
Yeah, so I actually found that my viewpoint and familiarity with scientific and fact-based inquiry was actually helpful in writing about this trip.
And your legal writing, did that help?
No, actually that was the part that I had to overcome, because legal writing is full of qualifications and conditional statements and complex compound phrases. And my editor kept saying, break it up, make simple statements, get across a single idea in each sentence. So I actually had to fight against my lawyerly style of writing.
Did you change your lawyerly style of writing after you wrote the book? I really wonder about that, you know.
I don't know. I would have a much greater sympathy now for people who have to read legal writing.
So okay, I mean, I do want to talk about, you know, the way it went, but before we do that, I'd like to spend a moment with you about the editor, and about, you know, finding a path to get published. So you spent 5 years on this. At what point did you connect with, when I say the commercial side of things, and start talking to an editor? Were you done with it, or were you in the middle of it?
Well, part of my encouragement to write the book comes from Dr. Patrick Takahashi, who's been
At the university.
A lifelong biochemist, researcher, policy writer on renewable energy.
Oh, I get his email, and so do you. You're always on the email.
Right, Blue Revolution Hawaii.
Yeah.
And he in his later years has become a very florid bon vivant and casual observer of human foibles, as explained on his blog site and in his many Huffington Post articles. So the inspiration to undertake a work of fiction with a science and factual-based background really came from his example. I felt that this was something I could undertake. In taking the trip and reading over my travel diary, I felt that this is something that is a new experience for me and might very well be a unique viewpoint. And in a way, the idea that it should be published was kind of established from the get-go.
Oh, okay.
I didn't really agonize about it. It was just something I was going to do. And fortunately, we live in an era now where all of this stuff can be done online through one of these self-publishing
Is that what you did?
agencies. Yeah, I picked Author House, but there are many. And actually, the majority of books published today are published by self-publishing agencies. So you pay a small fee, and they take care of everything to do with publishing. They get the ISBN numbers, they do the layouts, they help you with the cover, the back cover, the marketing material. They convert it to all the ebook formats. They post it on all the ebook sites for distribution. They go through international, it's all done. Publishing your book is not an issue anymore. But then the marketing of the book, getting people to want to read your book, that's still left to the author. And that's why I'm very grateful to have you conduct the first interview.
I knew all of that. There have been many people that have sat at this table who have published books with the same motivation in mind. But you know, the thing about it is that it does take some effort and some money, I guess, to get published. Self-publishing used to be called Vanity, but they don't call it Vanity Press anymore. And so many books are published that way. And so now, once you're done with that, and once you've made the choices about how you wanted them to handle it, and create the physical product and all, then you go out and how do you get the public interested in the book aside from sitting here? I mean, what do you need to do to get it out?
Well, it's a pretty well-known path. First of all, you need some credible reviews. Book reading is still largely based on recommendation. There are so many books, nobody can read all of them, and so we depend on recommendations to winnow out what's worth reading and what isn't. So getting professional reviewers to read the book and possibly write a review of it is really the first step. Then once you have a certain amount of entree, then you need to be visible publicly, and bookstores like to have authors come in for book signing events because they get to sell books that way. But also nonprofit organizations, public venues, policy types of groups all like to use book reading as a way to promote discussion about ideas. So that part of it is pretty well established. It's not easy, but someone who is willing to undertake promotion of their book, I think will find that there are many well-established channels. And now social media is another channel. Although I'm not sure about the credibility of it. It's still far too promiscuous, as far as I'm concerned, to be highly reliable as a recommendation source.
What are the good review organizations that you would want to get into? I mean, I'm talking about online.
Well, I was going to say that my book is a little bit different, so I had to develop a different marketing strategy for my book. First of all, as a patent attorney, I am not an expert on nuclear weapons or on proliferation policy. So the book cannot be promoted as an expert or a treatise or a think tank type of thing. Secondly, because I wanted to have a scientifically based background to what is basically a travel adventure story, it's a mixed genre book. It's not something that is identified as science fiction or drama or biography. It's a mixed genre, and so the targeted audience would tend to be specialized groups that have this kind of interest. For example, there's a non-proliferation crowd, a bunch of NGOs and policymakers and spies, and so that would be one audience. Another audience might be one that wants to promote decision based upon science-based decision making or critical thinking, or what's sometimes called applied rationality. So that might be another audience that I would be interested in tapping. So in my situation, it's different. I would go for targeted audiences. But for people who are writing on a general subject or a subject that's in a popular genre, the avenues are wide open to do whatever promotion they can think of.
Moving more toward the content for a moment, do you want to change the way people think? Are you trying to reach the audience as you described it in order to change the way, to raise their awareness on a particular issue or approach?
Absolutely. That was absolutely the reason to write the book. For myself, being able to experience the planet as a whole, I had an epiphany that a lot of the things we do on a day-to-day basis does not make sense. It puts us at greater risk of annihilating ourselves rather than solving those problems. And so I don't think I have all the answers, and I don't think that I'm going to start a religion around this or espouse Leightonism.
Leightonism. You heard it here on ThinkTech Hawaii. Leightonism. You may not like it, but it may happen anyway.
But I do want to say that I am most interested, and I think everyone should be most interested in looking at questions of our impact on the Earth and human survival and what we could be doing better. And this is one way that you can access kind of a larger view of what we're doing by just stepping back and looking at the planet as a whole. Mm-hmm. Very different from being of a particular political persuasion, religion, ethnic group, nationality.
So I take it that the trip and the book have actually ripened your ideas in this regard, or did you always feel this way?
No, I always felt everyone is messed up. But having taken the trip, I understand why they're messed up now, and I understand that there's a better way, and I hope that we can all find our own way to acting better toward the planet, and especially the next generation who will become the next stewards of planet Earth.
The beneficiaries of whatever we do. So tell us a little about the plot, if you don't mind. I don't want to ruin it for anybody, but if you could just give us a rough outline of the plot.
Okay. The story starts with Alvin Santori, a person of Catholic background who happens to be a lawyer from Hawaii, who writes on arms control issues for the East-West Institute. And he signs up for a world tour with Latif Youssef, a Sufi musician, with an itinerary that spans the earth. And there are other tour guests within the group, and one of them is a person of Middle Eastern origin who happens to work for a defense contractor in California on nuclear weapons simulations. And they have a very good interaction. He greatly respects this person's view of Muslim religion and issues of nuclear weapons. But he happens, in the middle of the trip, while taking another guest to lunch, he happens to see this person sitting at another table with what looks like three men of Middle Eastern descent who look very serious and very threatening. And he sees this person on the tour pass an envelope of the type that the CIA uses, the State Department uses for classified documents, with which Alvin is well familiar because he's received such documents himself. And so he becomes very conflicted as to what he should do about what he's seen. First, he tries to talk to Isfahan Ghazan is the name of the other person. He tries to explore with exactly what his viewpoints are about the work that he does in nuclear weapons simulation and issues of proliferation. And seems to have some very rational and reasonable views, but he won't admit to having passed classified documents. So Alvin feels very conflicted and feels that he has to do something to get to the bottom of this. And that's where the story unfolds to its conclusion.
And I guess you're not going to tell us much more about it because you want us to read the book and see. Well, it's a nice looking book, and it's
it's very short.
Very short.
It's only 142 pages.
Yeah.
It is somewhat dense, so try to get past at least the first 2 or 3 chapters, and then I think the story will start to unfold for you.
So you say it's the song of planet Earth, and I sense in you. I mean, I suppose many lawyers have. Through their experience and their contact with the human condition, they become poets of a sort. And I sense that in you. But now you say "Song of Planet Earth." I mean, that's not a random word. What do you mean by that?
Wow, you're very perceptive, Jay. Actually, I have been writing poetry since college, and for 4 decades now, I've been working on a type of poetry that I call science poetry. It's poetry that is based on
science poetry. I've never heard it before. You haven't either, but this is important. Écoutez.
And I couldn't get anyone to read my science poetry, and readings that I did give in New York and elsewhere kind of hit the ground like a lead balloon. So as I was writing this book, I thought, wouldn't it be great to write an epic poem about the history of the planet Earth from 5 billion years ago to the present in 10 stanzas, and have this sung by the alien, because of course the alien, being of a much higher level of consciousness, accesses all of his mental and sensory faculties, and singing the song of planet Earth is probably how they would do it. They wouldn't write legal research papers. So the book starts off with an epic poem about how the Earth came into existence and where it is currently. And that became the vehicle for the whole book, to look at it as a song that a higher consciousness can hear and access, and which occurs for us in our daily lives, but we could also be part of this greater song.
And here on, in Mongolia, or across the great distances, and if you zoom out a little and listen to it, it's a matter of listening for the sounds of the planet,
Yes.
and the sounds of humanity.
Yes.
There is a song. You have to take it all, interpret it, but there it is. It's a song to everyone, isn't it?
I would like you to write a sequel to this.
Well, I'm touched by it. I didn't know, and now I know a lot more. And I really want to read this book, because I think that everyone has a book in him. Everyone who's worked hard all his life has a book in him, and you come to a time in your life when you want to share that with other people.
I think that's right.
And so it's really notable. I mean, I think we come from the same place about paying back and giving back. You're not going to make a lot of money on this book, are you?
I would like a lot of people to read it. I really don't care if I don't make $1 from it.
So you think there's another one in you?
Oh, that's agony to think about the second. And not only that, but because I'm in my 60s now, I feel like I should be the family historian. And the idea of writing a family history as a second book is just so daunting, and I don't even want to think about it. So I'm just enjoying right now releasing the first one. I'm trying not to think about the second.
Well, Leighton, I think it's great that you've done this. I mean, to me, it's kind of a surprise, but maybe, may I say, not really a big surprise, because I always saw you as a guy who was very observant, and you could integrate the world around you, and this is a nice thing you've done. So
Thanks, Jay.
I hope you enjoy it. I hope you have lots of sales, and I hope you have an effect on people, lots of people.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Aloha.